Gwen, thank you, thank you. All right, so let me get started here. We'll give people another minute or two to kind of trickle in, but I'm Corey McComb, and I'm a writer and marketer based out of San Diego, California. And yeah, George, I got the end of that talk, How to Beat Burnout, was amazing. Hopefully I can add some extra value to the conversation. But I'm based in San Diego. I just wrote my first book. It's called Productivity is for Robots. And it's all about staying human, avoiding burnout, getting creative. So we can do some Q&A at the end of this session about the book. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that really set me on the path to writing this book. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'll do a Q&A at the end, and yeah, let's just go. This is my first talk, so I'm really excited to be here. I got some cue cards here. You can bear with me. And if any audio goes out or anything, just let me know. But today I'm going to talk about how to avoid burnout and maintain a state of creative flow. Okay. Let me know in the chat really quick if anybody that's watching has ever experienced any type of burnout in life. Just give me like a thumbs up so I know that we've all kind of dealt with something like that. Oh yeah. So it was about 2 years ago when I turned a very slow-paced march toward mental and emotional burnout into just a full-blown sprint. I had my dream job. I was working for a remote marketing agency. I was making more money than ever. I was traveling the world, working with interesting people. I was trying to write a book, and I was about to get married. I was planning a wedding. You know, although if my wife heard me say I was planning a wedding, she would totally roll her eyes. But I found myself spread very thin, and it was strange because everything that I was doing were the things that I really wanted to do. I think that's one of the biggest myths of burnout, or something that most people don't think about, is you can get burnt out doing the things that you actually love. You know, during this time, I would be, waking up each morning just feeling like the waves of overwhelm were crashing over my head. At night, I'd go to sleep just haunted by the things that I didn't do, what I wasn't doing enough of, who I was letting down in life, all of that. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go and try and write and try and live this purpose and this passion. And it would just be so hard for me to get into that zone. I knew how it felt to be in flow, and I knew what I wanted to write. But each day I'd walk to my desk and I just could not shake that feeling of overwhelm and just disconnect. I just felt so disconnected from everything that I was doing. It would take me a few hours, and by the time I would get into flow and work, I would just take it for all it's worth, really, write and write and write. And then I would stand up from my desk at the end of the day, just feeling drained, though I would feel triumphant, as if I won the race, if I faced the monster and I still won. But as I went on and the burnout became more and more, I started asking myself, why do I feel so empty? This is how you become successful. That was the story that I had always believed in and that had been preached to me, is it's the hard work. It's those who can stay in it the longest and the hardest that are going to eventually win. And then something happened. I was reading a story about another famous writer who gave away one of his secrets. He gave away a very important secret that would change my life forever. So I'm going to read from you what I read, which was the first piece of the puzzle. This writer wrote, "I had learned already never to empty the well of my writing, but always to stop when there was still something there in the deep part of the well, and let it refill at night from the springs that fed it." Okay, let me know in the chat if you know who that writer might have been. No idea. Hemingway. All right, Max, you got it. So that was Hemingway, and that quote was the first piece of the puzzle, and what really got me to start thinking more and more about the relationship between flow and burnout. Because as creatives, in this world, we're in a tug of war between flow and burnout at all times, right? We want all of the flow and none of the burnout, right? And one thing I want to mention about burnout is that it is very, very insidious. It seeps into everything that we do until almost everything becomes too much. Give me another thumbs up in the chat if anyone has ever felt so burnt out in one area of their life that when something else comes along that they should be excited about and sounds awesome, you hear it and you're just like, God, I wish I could do that, but I'm just so burnt out from this other thing that it just takes all the color out. Yeah, so that's what was happening to me. And another thing about burnout is, yeah, Kathy, exactly. It just ends up sounding like one more thing to do. Really suffocates the joy out of everything. Another thing about burnout that's important to remember, and this was the light bulb moment for me, is that it doesn't only affect the work that we do. I would walk away really worried about how the burnout is making my work not as good, but I didn't realize what was really happening. The more serious consequence of working when you're burnt out is that it actually fractures the relationship to the work itself. It creates micro amounts of trauma around the things that we say that we love. It creates conflict. So on one hand, we are living our passion and living our purpose and doing and stepping up and stepping into the thing that we say that we want to do with our lives. But at the same time, there's this conflict, there's this trauma around this work that we're doing, and it slowly but surely builds up like knots in your neck. So it really can suffocate the joy. So the question that I began to ask myself as I studied more and thought more about this and started to investigate my relationship with my work was, how can I avoid the burnout before the symptoms arrive? Because it's really easy when we talk about burnout, we often hear things that can try and wipe away the symptoms, like, oh, take a day off, take a week off, get a massage, exercise, switch it up. These are all trying to answer the burnout after it's already arrived. And I was more interested in how can I maintain a state of creative flow without ever having to worry and combat those symptoms. Now, I found the answer to that question from someone named Josh Waitzkin. He was being interviewed on the Tim Ferriss show. And Josh Waitzkin is a writer, a chess prodigy. He was the basis for the film Searching for Bobby Fischer. Really, really interesting guy. And he was describing on the Tim Ferriss show a conversation he had with a skiing legend named Billy Kidd. So I'm going to read to you what Josh Waitzkin said about this conversation. Josh asked Billy, what are the 3 most important turns on any ski run? The 3 most important turns of a ski run are the last 3 before you get on the lift. That's when the slope has leveled off. That's when there's less challenge. This is where most people are very sloppy. They're taking the weight off the muscles they've been using. They have bad form. The problem is that on the lift ride up, they're unconsciously internalizing those bad body mechanics. As Billy points out, if your last 3 turns are precise, you're internalizing precision on the lift ride up. So that's what clicked for me, because that's the same thing that it goes with flow. When we walk away from our work, drained, dazed, and confused, we're internalizing those feelings. They're building up like knots in our neck. And when we walk back to our desk the next day, it's those feelings that are hitching a ride. They're there waiting for us. So it's that second piece of the puzzle mixed with the Hemingway quote that clicked for me, because I realized that the solution is hidden in the problem. It's Hemingway's response to never empty the well. What Hemingway understood, what he knew, was that the secret to entering a flow state was to never fully leave it at all. I'm going to read one more passage from Hemingway. This was from A Movable Feast, his memoir about life in Paris. It ties together nicely with this. He says, I always worked until I had something done, and I always stopped when I knew what was going to happen next. That way, I could be sure of going on the next day. So Hemingway walked away from his work. He walked away from his typewriter each day when he was still in that state of flow. And that's why he was so easily able to step back in. That's why he didn't develop any of those. He didn't have to overcome those bad habits. He didn't have to overcome the micro trauma and the conflict between him and his work, because once he knew that he was on the right track and had more gas in the tank, he would walk away. So obviously that is the hardest part. Anyone here that's a writer or creative in any kind knows once you hit that flow state, the last thing you want to do is step out of it, right? Um, and it's really easy to get caught up in the entrepreneur, rah. It's almost as if we've been led to believe that we have to beat our heads against the wall in search of quality work, almost like it's a rite of passage, or as if the gods of productivity will only bless those who are willing to suffer for their creative work. But Hemingway knew better, and I think that we can all take this lesson moving into 2021. It's definitely helped me a lot in 2020. So my challenge for you isn't to hustle and grind through 2021. It's to have the real discipline and the self-control to keep gas in the tank and keep inspiration alive. It's to never empty the well and to stay in flow. Because as you will all learn, it takes a very cool, like Hemingway confidence to tell the muses, we worked enough today. I'm sure I'll see you around tomorrow. Okay. That's all. All right. Hopefully that resonated with some of you, and that we can take a lesson from Hemingway and move into 2021. I know he's one of my favorite literary characters, so it's not a bad person to think about when walking away from your work at the end of the day. Does anybody have any questions about that topic? Yes, absolutely, Kathy. It does take extra discipline and self-control, and I think that that's when we think about discipline, we think about staying in the pressure cooker, because that's kind of what we've been taught. And it's difficult to retrain our brain just to understand that we really need to just walk away and, like Hemingway said, let the well refill at night. One thing I want to point out is, do you think we need to have different wells? I mean, a well for our 9-to-5 job, one for our family. Yeah, I think so. I think that they're all connected. I think it's also going to come down to what is creating that micro trauma, and you have to be honest with yourself when you feel it. If you are feeling burnt out in the 9-to-5 job, that is going to definitely trickle into to your family and side hustles and everything like that. So I think that it starts with really identifying the feelings that are starting to come up for you and kind of piece together where you might be draining the well. And that chapter is really what helped me pave the way for Productivity is for Robots. And it was that story about Hemingway that really prompted me to investigate other stories about how we can kind of lean into human nature. Because what the big takeaway for me was that Hemingway understood that, we didn't have as much technology back then, but he was smart enough not to swim against his human nature. He understood that flow wasn't a ghost to just be strangled on every chance encounter. And that, Productivities for Robots is about this concept that, we already have robots that can work hours and hours and hours, and, it's supposed to set us free to be more creative. And instead, it's very easy to just step in and try and imitate them. We feel like we need to be the machines. We need to work hard and grind it and hustle it out. So if this topic resonates with you, please, you can send me a message. I will be back in reception. My book is available on Amazon and Kindle, and really excited to connect with you all offline or in reception and see you in other talks. So hope you check out my book, Productivity is for Robots. Thanks for bearing with me with my first talk. A lot of fun, and yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.